Abigail Sterling perched on the arm of the antique velvet sofa in the Atherton Mansion's private library, one leg extended gracefully, chin tilted just so toward the afternoon light streaming through the bay windows. Her phone balanced precariously against a stack of leather-bound books she'd been assigned to dust 20 minutes ago. The device's timer counted down with quiet intensity. 5 seconds. 4. 3. She'd changed out of her standard gray, Maid uniform into a thrifted emerald slip dress that she kept folded carefully in her work bag for exactly these stolen moments. The fabric caught the light beautifully, shimmering against her fair brown skin in a way that her followers always commented on. She arched her back slightly, remembering the pose she'd studied on Instagram the night before, trying to embody that effortless confidence that successful influencers seem to radiate naturally. 2 seconds. 1. Click. That's an interesting interpretation of dusting. The voice cut through the library's silence like a blade through silk. Abigail's entire body jerked in surprise. Her carefully balanced position collapsed. She tumbled off the sofa arm, landing hard on her hip, and her phone clattered across the hardwood floor with an expensive-sounding crack. Standing in the doorway with his arms crossed over a black turtleneck was Yujin Kang, the man who owned this 12,000-square-foot estate. The man who also owned approximately 40 other properties scattered across California's wealthiest enclaves. The man who, at 32 years old, ran the Kang family's extensive network of businesses with the kind of cold precision that made competitors nervous and subordinates careful. He was watching her with an expression that Abigail couldn't quite read. His dark eyes held an intensity that made her skin flush hot with a mixture of embarrassment and something else she didn't want to examine too closely. "Mr. Kang," Abigail stammered, scrambling to her feet and nearly tripping over the dress she absolutely should not be wearing on company time. "I was just taking a quick break. I swear I've finished all the upstairs rooms and the—" "You were modeling," Yujin interrupted, his tone neutral. He stepped further into the library, and that's when Abigail noticed what he was carrying. A professional camera, not a phone. An actual DSLR with a lens that probably cost more than the beat-up Honda Civic she drove to work every day. Abigail's mouth went dry. She'd been working for the Kang household for 6 months, and in all that time, she'd barely exchanged more than polite greetings with the man himself. He was almost never home, and when he was, he stayed sequestered in his office taking calls in rapid Korean or meeting with serious-looking people in expensive suits. "I'm so sorry," she managed. "It won't happen again. I'll just grab my things and—" "The lighting is wrong," Yujin said, as if she hadn't spoken. He moved past her to the windows, setting his camera down on a side table before reaching up to adjust the sheer curtains with quick, efficient movements. "You're getting harsh shadows under your jaw, and the backlighting is creating a halo effect that's washing out your features." Abigail blinked, then blinked again. That was categorically not the response she'd been expecting. What?" Yujin turned back to face her, picked up his camera, and looked through the viewfinder. He aimed it vaguely in her direction, frowned, then lowered it to meet her confused stare directly. "If you're going to use my library as your personal photo studio, at least do it properly. The natural light in here is exceptional. It's wasted on bad angles and phone cameras with inferior sensors." He raised the camera again, made some adjustment to the settings that Abigail couldn't see, then looked at her with an expression of mild impatience. "Well, are you going to stand there looking confused, or are we doing this?" Abigail's mind had gone completely, utterly blank. Her employer, the notoriously private businessman whose name alone commanded respect in San Francisco's elite circles, was offering to photograph her. This had to be a fever dream, or a trap, or possibly some kind of elaborate test she was definitely failing. "I don't understand what's happening right now," she said honestly. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Yujin's face. "Photography is a hobby of mine. Or it was, before I stopped having time for hobbies. You clearly want better photos than what that phone can provide. I have approximately 15 minutes before my next conference call. Consider it a mutually beneficial exchange. You get your content. I get to remember what holding a camera feels like." There was something in his voice on those last words that made Abigail look at him more carefully. For just a fraction of a second, there was something in his expression that looked almost like longing. A crack in the carefully controlled facade. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual unreadable demeanor. "Okay," Abigail heard herself say, even though every rational part of her brain was screaming that this was weird and inappropriate and definitely not in her job description. "Yes, thank you." The corner of Eugen's mouth twitched upward. It might have been a smile. Abigail had never seen him smile before, so she couldn't be certain. "Don't thank me yet. I'm a perfectionist, and I don't have patience for people who can't take direction. Back on the sofa. And adjust the strap on your right shoulder. It's crooked." Abigail moved back to the sofa on legs that felt disconnected from her body. She fixed the dress strap with trembling fingers. Eugen circled her slowly, studying angles, occasionally reaching out to adjust a cushion or shift a piece of furniture an inch to the left. His movements were deliberate and professional, but Abigail's heart was hammering so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Relax your shoulders," he said without looking up from his camera. "You're holding tension in your neck. Take a breath." Abigail breathed. Slowly, impossibly, she began to relax. Eugen's directions were clear and confident. "Turn your head slightly left. Eyes toward the window, not at the camera. Soften your expression. There, hold that." The camera shutter clicked in rapid succession. Eugen moved around the room with surprising grace for someone so tall, crouching low for one angle, standing on a footstool for another. He was completely absorbed in the work, and watching him, Abigail felt something shift in her perception of the cold, distant employer she'd constructed in her mind. This was someone who cared about something beyond profit margins and business meetings. This was someone who understood light and composition and the precise moment when everything aligned into something beautiful. 15 minutes stretched into 25 before Eugen finally lowered the camera and checked his watch. "I'm late for my call," he said, but he didn't sound particularly concerned about it. "Change back into your uniform before the housekeeper sees you. Mrs. Chen has a talent for gossip." He headed for the door, then paused and looked back at her. "Leave your email address on the notepad in the kitchen. I'll send you the edited photos in a few days." Then he was gone, leaving Abigail sitting on a velvet sofa in a borrowed dress, wondering what on earth had just happened to her carefully ordinary life. If you were Abigail, would you have stayed for the photo shoot or run out of that library as fast as possible? Let me know in the comments, and if you're already hooked on this story, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Trust me, you're going to want to see where this goes. Now, let's continue. Over the next week, Abigail told herself that the photography session had been a one-time thing, an aberration, a strange moment that would never be repeated. She went about her cleaning duties with meticulous care, trying to ignore the flutter of anticipation in her chest every time she heard footsteps in the hallway. Eugen didn't appear. His office door remained closed. The house felt emptier than usual. On the 8th day, Abigail was polishing the banister on the main staircase when she heard the distinctive click of expensive shoes on marble flooring. She looked up to find Eugen standing at the base of the stairs, camera in hand, looking up at her with that same unreadable expression. "The light coming through the skylight is perfect right now," he said without preamble. "Stay exactly where you are." And just like that, it became their routine. Eugen would appear in whatever room Abigail was cleaning, camera ready, and they would fall into an unspoken rhythm. He barely spoke during these sessions except to give direction. "Chin down, eyes to the left. Relax your shoulders, you're too stiff. Better. Again." Abigail learned that Eugen was exacting but never cruel. If she didn't understand a direction, he would demonstrate with his own posture, moving with an unconscious elegance that suggested expensive childhood training. Ballet or martial arts or something equally disciplined. He never touched her to adjust her position. He would simply show her what he wanted and wait for her to replicate it. She learned that he preferred natural light to artificial, that he shot in bursts, sometimes taking 50 photos to get the one perfect moment, that he occasionally muttered to himself in Korean when the light shifted before he was ready. On the 15th day, He handed her a small USB drive as she was preparing to leave for the day. "Your photos, edited." Abigail nearly dropped the tiny device. "All of them." "The good ones. I deleted the ones that didn't meet my standards." Yujin was already turning away, pulling out his phone to check messages. "You're welcome to use them however you like. I don't require credit, but I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention where they were taken." That night, alone in the Studio City apartment that she shared with her older sister Janelle, Abigail plugged the USB drive into her laptop with hands that shook slightly. The folder contained 47 photos. She opened the first one and felt her breath catch in her throat. The woman in the photo looked like someone else entirely, someone confident and beautiful and powerful. Yujin had captured something in her expression that Abigail had never seen in her own face before, a kind of quiet strength. The way he'd worked with the light made her skin seem to glow. The composition was flawless, drawing the eye exactly where it needed to go. She clicked through the rest of the photos in stunned silence. Each one was perfect. Each one told a different story. Playful, thoughtful, mysterious, joyful. "Abby, are you crying?" Janelle's voice came from the doorway of their shared bedroom. "Come look at these," Abigail whispered. Janelle came to stand behind her, looking over her shoulder at the laptop screen. She was quiet for a long moment as Abigail clicked through the images. Then she let out a low whistle. "Holy hell, who took these? These are professional level. Actually, these are better than professional. These are art." "My boss," Abigail said. "Your boss, the scary Korean guy who owns half of Silicon Valley." "He's not scary, he's just intense." Janelle gave her a look. "Abby, these photos are not just intense. These photos are intimate. He sees you." Abigail closed the laptop quickly, suddenly uncomfortable. "He's just good at photography. It's not about me specifically." "Keep telling yourself that," Janelle said, but she was smiling. That night, Abigail posted one photo to her Instagram account with a simple caption, "Golden Hour Magic." Her account was small, just under 800 followers that she'd accumulated over 2 years of inconsistent posting. She didn't expect much response. By morning, the photo had 3,000 likes. Her follower count had jumped to 5,000. Her phone was full of notifications. Comments poured in. "Who took this? You're stunning. Where can I book a session with your photographer? This is giving high fashion editorial energy." Abigail stared at her phone screen over her morning coffee, unable to process what she was seeing. One photo. One single photo that Yujin had taken had done more for her social media presence than 2 years of effort. At work that day, she found Yujin in his office. The door was open, which was unusual. He was on the phone speaking Korean, but he saw her hovering in the hallway and gestured for her to wait. He ended the call and looked at her expectantly. "Problem." "The photo got 3,000 likes," Abigail blurted out. Yujin's eyebrows rose slightly. "Congratulations. You have good bone structure and the algorithm likes natural lighting. What's the problem?" "That's not a problem. I just wanted to say thank you. Really, this is. You have no idea what this means to me." Something shifted in Yujin's expression. The usual cool detachment softened slightly. "You're welcome. Are you free this Saturday?" Abigail blinked at the sudden change of subject. "I think so. Why?" "There's a location in Malibu I've been wanting to shoot for years. Beach caves at sunset. The light should be exceptional, if you're interested." "You want to do another shoot, outside of the house?" "Unless you'd prefer to keep posing with furniture and bookshelves," Yujin said dryly. "I'll pay you for your time, standard modeling rates, and I'll handle any permits or location fees." Abigail's mind was racing. This was moving beyond their strange, informal arrangement into something that sounded almost professional. "I don't know standard modeling rates." "Then I'll pay you what I think is fair, and you can tell me if you disagree." Yujin was already making notes on his phone. "Bring layers. It gets cold on the beach at sunset. I'll text you the address." He returned his attention to his computer screen, and Abigail realized she'd been dismissed. But as she left his office, she heard him say quietly, "Your sister is right, by the way." She turned back. About what? The photos are intimate. That's what makes them good. Jin looked up at her, and for just a moment his careful mask slipped. I don't photograph things I don't find interesting. Then the mask was back, and he was waving her away. You have baseboards to clean, don't you? Stop loitering. But Abigail left with a smile she couldn't quite suppress. The Malibu shoot was unlike anything Abigail had experienced. Jin picked her up at dawn on Saturday morning in a black Range Rover that still had that new car smell. They drove in companionable silence for most of the trip, the sunrise painting the sky in shades of pink and gold as they headed up the Pacific Coast Highway. You don't talk much, Abigail observed as they passed through Malibu proper. I don't like meaningless small talk, Jin replied. If you have something worth saying, say it. Otherwise, silence is fine. What if I want to ask you questions? Then ask. Abigail considered this. Why did you stop doing photography professionally? Jin's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. My father died 5 years ago, suddenly, heart attack at 58. He'd built the family business from almost nothing, and he left it to me. There wasn't time for hobbies anymore. There was only time for work. That sounds lonely. It was practical, but something in his voice suggested it had been lonely too. They lapsed back into silence until they reached the beach location. The caves Jin had mentioned were dramatic rock formations carved by thousands of years of waves. The sand was golden. The water was impossibly blue, and there was no one else around. How did you get permits for a private beach? Abigail asked. I know the owner. He owes me a favor. Jin was already unloading camera equipment from the back of the Range Rover. Get changed. There's a bathroom facility about 100 yards that way. He'd brought wardrobe options. 3 different outfits, all in flowing fabrics that would move well in the ocean breeze. Abigail changed into the first one, a white dress that reminded her of something a Greek goddess might wear, and walked back to find Jin setting up reflectors and light meters. The shoot lasted 6 hours. Jin was tireless, constantly moving, constantly adjusting. He had her pose in the caves, on the wet sand, standing in the shallow waves. By the time the sun was setting, Abigail was exhausted, wind-blown, and covered in a thin layer of salt and sand. She was also happier than she'd been in months. You're a natural, Jin said as he packed up his equipment. Most amateur models get stiff and self-conscious. You just get more comfortable as you go. I think it's because you make it feel safe, Abigail said before she could stop herself. Like even if I do something awkward, you'll just fix it. You won't judge. Jin looked at her for a long moment. I wouldn't photograph you if I thought you were awkward. I don't waste my time on subjects that don't interest me. There was something in the way he said it that made Abigail's pulse quicken, an intensity that felt like it had nothing to do with photography. Mr. Kang. Jin, he interrupted. If we're going to keep doing this, you should probably use my first name. Jin, Abigail corrected. What are we doing exactly? Right now, packing up equipment. In the broader sense, Jin closed the trunk of the Range Rover. I don't know yet, but I'd like to keep doing it. They drove back to Los Angeles as the sky darkened into night. When Jin dropped Abigail off at her apartment building in Studio City, he handed her an envelope. Inside was $1,500 in cash. Jin, this is too much. It's market rate for a 6-hour shoot with an experienced photographer. If anything, I'm underpaying you. He pulled away from the curb before she could argue further, leaving Abigail standing on the sidewalk with more money than she usually made in 2 weeks of cleaning houses. Over the next month, the photo shoots became a regular Saturday event. Sometimes they stayed local, shooting in downtown San Jose or the hills around Los Gatos. Other times they drove to locations up and down the California coast. Jin hired professional hair and makeup artists. He brought increasingly elaborate wardrobe options. Abigail's Instagram exploded. 5,000 followers became 10,000, then 20,000, then 50,000. Brands started reaching out. Small ones at first, then bigger names. Skincare companies, clothing boutiques, a watch manufacturer. You need to start thinking of this as a business, Janelle said, watching Abigail field emails from potential sponsors. You need contracts, an LLC, maybe even an agent. I don't know how to do any of that, Abigail protested. Then learn, or ask your photographer, he obviously knows business. But asking Yujin felt like crossing a line. Their arrangement existed in this strange space between professional and personal. They spent hours together every weekend. They developed inside jokes. Abigail had learned that Yujin took his coffee black, hated being late to anything, and had a surprisingly dark sense of humor that only emerged when he was comfortable. But they never talked about what they were doing beyond the immediate logistics of the next shoot. They never acknowledged that the way Yujin looked at her through the camera lens sometimes felt like he was seeing straight into her soul. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Abigail made a mistake. She posted a photo that included a reflection in an antique mirror behind her. The reflection showed part of Yujin's library, including a distinctive jade sculpture that had been featured in Architectural Digest 6 months earlier. The comments started immediately. Wait, is this the Kang estate in Atherton? How did you get access to this place? Are you dating someone rich? Girl, you better spill the tea. Abigail's stomach dropped. She deleted the post within an hour, but the internet never forgets. Screenshots had already circulated. Her follower count jumped by another 5,000 overnight, but the comments had shifted. Now people weren't just admiring the photos. They were asking questions, making assumptions. Abigail Sterling is definitely sleeping with someone rich. I bet she's a sugar baby. Must be nice to get a free ride to Instagram fame. When Abigail arrived at the Atherton mansion for work on Monday, she was prepared to be fired, or at least to receive a stern lecture about discretion and social media policies. Instead, Yujin was waiting in the foyer with his camera and a black garment bag draped over one arm. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Your followers think you're hiding a relationship with someone wealthy. The speculation is only going to get worse unless we address it directly." "I know, I'm so sorry, Yujin. I'll post a clarification. I'll say I was house-sitting or—" "You'll say you're a model signed with an exclusive photographer," Yujin interrupted. He set down the garment bag and pulled a folder from his messenger bag. "Which, as of this morning, is technically true. My lawyers drew up a contract." Abigail took the folder with hands that had started trembling. Inside was a legitimate modeling contract with Kang Creative Studios, LLC. The terms were generous, more than generous. The monthly retainer alone was more than she made cleaning houses. "This is real," she whispered. "I own several creative subsidiary companies. Most have been dormant for years. I'm reactivating one for this purpose." Yujin's expression was carefully neutral, but there was something underneath it, something that looked almost vulnerable. "Your social media presence has real potential. With proper management and professional photography, you could turn this into an actual career. I'm offering you that opportunity." "But why?" The question came out barely audible. "You barely knew me 2 months ago. I'm just someone who cleaned your house." Yujin was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than Abigail had ever heard it. "Because you remind me that some things are worth doing simply because they matter to you. Not because they're strategic or profitable or expected, just because they make you feel alive." He cleared his throat, as if embarrassed by the admission. "Also, you're wasting your potential cleaning other people's houses. This is a better use of both our time and your considerable natural talent." Abigail looked down at the contract again. The official Kang Creative Studios letterhead, the precise legal language, the signature line waiting for her decision. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Then put on the dress in that garment bag. We have a shoot scheduled in Malibu in 2 hours, and I have a pathological aversion to being late for anything." Abigail met his eyes, dark and intense and for once completely open. She saw the offer for what it really was, not just a business opportunity, a chance to step into a completely different life, to become someone she'd never imagined she could be. "Yes," she said, "absolutely yes." The corner of Yujin's mouth tilted up in what was definitely a smile this time. "Good. Now hurry up and change. Traffic on the 101 is unpredictable, and I want to catch the afternoon light. The next 2 months passed in a blur of photo shoots, brand partnerships, and steadily climbing social media metrics. Abigail quit her other cleaning jobs to focus full-time on modeling and content creation. Eugen hired a professional social media manager to handle her sponsorship negotiations. They established a regular shooting schedule, 3 times per week, rotating between various locations around the Bay Area and Greater Los Angeles. The photos got better, more sophisticated. Eugen invested in new equipment, new lighting setups, new creative concepts. They shot in downtown San Jose's modern architecture district, capturing reflections in glass and steel. They spent a weekend in Los Gatos, using the natural beauty of the rolling hills as a backdrop. They did an editorial-style series in Newport Beach that went viral and added another 30,000 followers to Abigail's rapidly growing account. For the first time in her 26 years, Abigail felt like she was building something that belonged entirely to her. Not just surviving paycheck to paycheck, not just getting by, actually thriving, creating, becoming. She and Eugen fell into an easy partnership. He understood her instincts now, could anticipate how she'd move, what angles would work best. She learned to read his silences, to understand when his perfectionism was about the work and when it was about something deeper. They didn't talk about what existed between them beyond the professional arrangement. It felt safer that way, easier to maintain the careful boundaries that kept everything manageable. Then Eugen's family found out about her. They were shooting at a private beach in Newport Beach on a Wednesday afternoon. The light was perfect, golden and warm. Abigail was wearing a flowing coral dress, standing in the shallow waves, laughing at something Eugen had said about the persistent seagull that kept photobombing their shots. "The bird has better comedic timing than half the actors I've worked with," Eugen muttered, reviewing shots on his camera screen. That's when a sleek black Mercedes pulled up to the beach access road. A woman emerged, dressed in what Abigail recognized as designer everything. Perfectly tailored white pantsuit, Hermes bag, sunglasses that probably cost more than Abigail's entire wardrobe. She was beautiful in that effortless way that came from genetic lottery and expensive maintenance. And she was looking at Abigail like she was something unpleasant stuck to the bottom of her Italian leather shoes. "So you're the maid," the woman said, removing her sunglasses. Her English was perfect, barely accented. "I have to admit I didn't believe it when I heard the rumors. My brother playing photographer for the help. It's very progressive of you, Eugen." Eugen's entire demeanor changed. The easy warmth that had developed over the afternoon vanished, replaced by cold formality. "Abigail is my client, not my maid. And this is a closed set, Hannah. What do you want?" So this was his sister. Abigail had heard Eugen mention her occasionally, but always in tones of mild exasperation. Hannah's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Mother wants you at dinner tonight. 7 sharp. She has someone she wants you to meet." Her gaze slid to Abigail with pointed meaning. "Someone more appropriate than your current project." "I'll be there," Eugen said, his voice clipped. "Now if you'll excuse us, we're working." "Of course, working." Hannah put her sunglasses back on. "It was fascinating to meet you, Abigail. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other soon." The threat in those words was subtle but unmistakable. Hannah slid back into her Mercedes and drove away, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. Eugen didn't speak for a long moment. When he finally looked at Abigail, his expression was carefully blank. "I apologize for that. My sister has a talent for appearing at inconvenient moments." "What did she mean about someone appropriate?" Abigail asked, even though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Eugen's jaw tightened. "My family has certain expectations about my personal life, expectations I've been successfully ignoring for several years." He began packing up his camera equipment with sharp, precise movements. "We should call it for today. The light's wrong now anyway." They drove back to Los Angeles in silence. The easy comfort that had existed between them all afternoon was gone, replaced by tension that made the air in the Range Rover feel thick and hard to breathe. When Yujin dropped Abigail off at her apartment, he didn't meet her eyes. "I'll text you about this weekend's shoot. We might need to reschedule." Yujin. "Have a good evening, Abigail." It was a dismissal, polite but firm. Abigail watched him drive away, a knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. Something had shifted, and she had a terrible feeling that whatever came next was going to change everything. Inside the apartment, Janelle took one look at her face and immediately went to make tea. "What happened?" "I think I just met Yujin's family, or his sister at least, and I don't think she approves of me." "Does it matter if she approves?" Abigail thought about the look in Hana's eyes, the casual cruelty in her smile, the way Yujin had shut down completely the moment she'd appeared. "I think it might matter a lot more than I want it to." 4 days passed with no word from Yujin, no texts about rescheduling their shoot, no calls, nothing. His silence was louder than any conversation. Abigail tried to focus on other things. She had plenty of content to post from their previous shoots. She fielded increasingly lucrative brand partnership offers. Her follower count crossed 100,000, a milestone that should have felt like celebration, but instead felt hollow. She missed Yujin, not just the photo shoots. She missed his dry humor, the way he hummed unconsciously when he was reviewing photos, the rare, genuine smiles that transformed his entire face. She missed the person she'd started to become when he looked at her through his camera lens. On the 5th day, she received a text from an unknown number. "This is Hana Kang. I'd like to meet for coffee. There are things about my brother you should know. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Blue Bottle in Palo Alto." Every instinct Abigail possessed screamed that this was a terrible idea, but the not knowing was worse. She texted back her agreement. Blue Bottle Coffee in Palo Alto was exactly the kind of place Abigail expected Hana to choose. Minimalist, expensive, full of tech executives and venture capitalists having quiet conversations about disruption and market share. Hana was already there when Abigail arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee waiting. She'd ordered for both of them without asking preferences, and somehow that small presumption felt like a power play. "Thank you for coming," Hana said, gesturing for Abigail to sit. "I wasn't sure you would." "You said there were things I should know about Yujin." Abigail remained standing. "So tell me." Hana's smile was sharp. "Direct, I appreciate that. Sit, please. This isn't an ambush, Abigail, it's a courtesy." Abigail sat, but she didn't touch the coffee. "My brother is complicated," Hana began, settling back in her chair with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned her right to occupy space. "He's been groomed since birth to run our family's business interests. Every decision he makes is calculated, strategic. Nothing in Yujin's life happens by accident." "I'm aware that he's a successful businessman," Abigail said carefully. "Are you aware that in 2 months, he's supposed to announce his engagement to Minjai Park?" Hana's eyes glittered with something that might have been satisfaction at Abigail's obvious shock. "Our families have been planning this alliance for 3 years. It represents approximately $200 million in combined business interests, property development, tech investments, international trade relationships." The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm. Abigail's throat had gone dry. "He never mentioned an engagement." "Of course he didn't, because Yujin has been pretending it's not happening, that if he ignores it long enough, he won't have to follow through." Hana leaned forward, her voice dropping to something almost sympathetic. Almost. "Look, I actually don't blame you for this situation. My brother is charismatic when he wants to be, and I'm sure the photography arrangement seemed innocent at first." "It is innocent," Abigail said, but her voice lacked conviction even to her own ears. "Is it?" Hana tilted her head. "Abigail, my brother hasn't touched a camera in 5 years. He gave up photography when our father died because there wasn't time for hobbies anymore. Every minute of his day is scheduled, accounted for, but suddenly he's spending hours every week taking pictures of you, rearranging his entire schedule around your availability, turning down important meetings because he has a prior commitment." Each word landed like a small knife, because Abigail had noticed these things too, had wondered about them, had let herself hope they meant something beyond professional interest. What are you saying, Hannah? I'm saying my brother has developed feelings for you, and that's a problem. Hannah pulled a check from her designer purse and slid it across the table. It was made out to Abigail Sterling for $50,000. This is me offering you an exit. Take the money, walk away clean. Let Eugene do what he was always meant to do without the complication. Abigail stared at the check. $50,000. Life-changing money. The kind of money that would let her pursue modeling full-time without fear. That would give her breathing room to build her career properly. That would solve so many immediate problems. It would also mean never seeing Eugene again. Never feeling the way she felt when he looked at her like she was the most interesting subject he'd ever photographed. Never experiencing those moments of perfect creative synchronicity when they were shooting and everything just clicked. And if I don't take it, she asked. Hannah's expression hardened. Then I start making things very difficult for you. Modeling is a small world, Abigail, especially in California. It would be unfortunate if certain rumors started circulating about your professionalism, your reliability, if the brands currently interested in working with you suddenly heard concerns about your character. You'd sabotage my career. I'd protect my family's interests, which, to be clear, are worth considerably more than your Instagram account. Hannah stood, smoothing her perfect white pantsuit. You have 24 hours to decide. Cash the check and disappear. Or don't and face the consequences. Either way, Eugene will marry Minjai Park in 2 months. You're just deciding how much collateral damage happens along the way. She left without waiting for a response, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with efficient finality. Abigail sat alone at the table for a long time, staring at the check. $50,000. A bribe, a threat, an ultimatum. She thought about Eugene, about the way he'd shut down when Hannah appeared at the beach, about 4 days of silence, about an engagement he'd never mentioned. She thought about the life she was building, the followers who looked to her for inspiration, the brands that wanted to work with her, the future that had finally started to feel possible. Then she thought about what Janelle would say if she came home and announced she'd taken a payoff to walk away from someone she cared about. Actually, she knew exactly what Janelle would say, and most of it would be unprintable. Abigail picked up the check, folded it carefully, and put it in her purse, but not to cash it, to show Eugene. Because whatever happened next, it was going to involve honesty, even if that honesty destroyed everything. Abigail didn't cash the check. She also didn't answer when Eugene finally texted her the next morning asking about rescheduling their shoot. She needed to think, to process, to figure out what she actually wanted versus what made logical sense. Eugene didn't give her that luxury. He showed up at her Studio City apartment at 8:30 on a Thursday night. She answered the door in sweatpants and one of Janelle's old college hoodies, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup. "We need to talk," Eugene said. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, hair slightly disheveled. His usual perfect composure cracked around the edges. "Why are you avoiding me?" Janelle appeared behind Abigail, took one look at the situation, and grabbed her car keys. "I'm going to Target for several hours. Try not to break any of our furniture." She left, and suddenly Abigail was alone with Eugene in their tiny living room. He looked absurdly out of place among her thrifted furniture and Janelle's collection of random plants in mismatched pots. "Your sister came to see me," Abigail said, deciding directness was the only viable strategy. "She offered me $50,000 to walk away from you." Eugene closed his eyes. Of course she did. Hannah has always been efficient at solving problems she perceives as threats. "Is it true about the engagement?" "It's a business arrangement that was proposed 3 years ago. Minjai and I have an understanding." "That's not an answer, Eugene." He opened his eyes, and the vulnerability in them made Abigail's chest ache. "Yes, it's true. My family expects me to marry Minjai Park. The announcement is scheduled for 8 weeks from now. It's been on the calendar for months." "And you just, forgot to mention it?" Abigail's voice rose despite her best efforts to stay calm. "We've spent hours together every week for 2 months. You hired me. You signed a contract with me. You looked at me like, she broke off, unable to finish that sentence. Like what? Eugen stepped closer. Say it, Abigail. Like I mattered. Like this meant something beyond professional collaboration. It does mean something. You think I'd spend this much time, this much energy, this much of myself on something that didn't matter? Eugen ran his hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. I haven't picked up a camera in 5 years. 5 years. Because after my father died, there wasn't room in my life for anything except work, obligation, meeting everyone else's expectations. So what am I then? A midlife crisis, a distraction. You're the first thing I've wanted for myself in half a decade. The words came out raw, honest. You're the reason I remember what it feels like to create something just because it brings me joy, not because it's strategic or profitable or expected, just because it matters. Abigail felt tears pricking at her eyes. Then, why didn't you tell me about Minjai? Because I'm a selfish bastard who wanted to pretend a little longer that I could have this. Have you? Have something in my life that's mine and not predetermined by family politics and business strategy. Eugen's voice dropped. I know I have no right to ask you to wait, no right to ask you to keep doing this when I can't promise you anything, but I'm asking anyway. Why? Because the alternative is marrying someone I don't love and spending the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I'd been brave enough to choose differently. He took another step closer, and now they were barely a foot apart. I'm going to fix this, Abigail. The engagement, my family's expectations, all of it. How? Your sister made it clear that this marriage is worth hundreds of millions to your family. You can't just walk away from that. Watch me. There was steel in Eugen's voice now. I built my own assets separate from the family holdings. I have my own companies, my own investments. Kang Creative Studios is entirely mine. I don't need my family's approval or their money. But you'd be walking away from everything you've built, your father's legacy. My father's legacy is a cage. Eugen's laugh was bitter. He built an empire, and then he died and left me to maintain it. But he never asked if that's what I wanted. No one ever asked. Abigail thought about the man she'd come to know over the past 2 months. The way he came alive behind a camera. The rare smiles. The moments of pure creative flow when he was completely absorbed in his work. What do you want, Eugen? I want to photograph you on a beach in Malibu at sunset. I want to build a creative agency that makes things that matter. I want to wake up and know that my day belongs to me, not to some predetermined path laid out before I was old enough to have opinions. He reached for her hand, tentative. I want you to trust me when I say I'm going to find a way through this. Your sister said she'd destroy my career if I didn't walk away. Hana is very good at making threats. She's considerably less good at following through when someone actually stands up to her. Eugen's thumb traced circles on the back of Abigail's hand. But I won't let her hurt you. Whatever happens with my family, I'll make sure you're protected. Abigail looked at their joined hands, at this impossible man who was offering to blow up his entire life for the possibility of something real. How much time do we have? 8 weeks until the scheduled engagement announcement. But I'm going to talk to my family this weekend. Tell them I'm not going through with it. Start the process of separating my business interests from theirs. They're going to fight you. Undoubtedly, the Kang family doesn't accept defeat gracefully. Eugen managed a small smile. But I've been trained since birth to negotiate and win. I'll just be applying those skills to a different kind of battle. Abigail thought about the check in her purse, about Hana's threats, about the fact that she was falling for someone whose life was infinitely more complicated than anything she'd ever navigated. Okay, I trust you. Don't make me regret it. Eugen pulled her closer, and for a moment they just stood there in her tiny living room, holding onto each other like anchors in a storm. I won't, I promise. When he finally left, Abigail stood at the window and watched his Range Rover disappear into Los Angeles traffic. Then she pulled out the check Hana had given her, tore it into small pieces, and threw it away. Eugen's plan to quietly dissolve the engagement arrangement fell apart spectacularly when Minjai herself went public. On Monday morning, she posted a professionally shot photo to her Instagram account. Her and Yoojin at some charity event from months ago, looking like the perfect power couple. The caption read, "Excited to celebrate our upcoming engagement with family and friends. Some traditions are worth honoring." She tagged Yoojin. The post went viral within hours. Abigail's phone exploded with notifications. Her follower count jumped by 20,000 in a single day, but for all the wrong reasons. People who'd been following her content suddenly realized the photographer she'd been working with was Yoojin Kang. The same Yoojin Kang who was apparently engaged to Minjai Park. The comments turned vicious. "So you're the side chick. Imagine being a homewrecker for a guy who doesn't even claim you publicly. This is embarrassing. Have some self-respect. He's literally engaged and you're out here modeling for him. Yikes." Brand deals started falling through. 3 companies that had been in negotiations for partnerships suddenly went radio silent. Abigail's carefully built career was crumbling in real time, destroyed by speculation and assumptions and the court of public opinion. She made her Instagram private, but it was too late. Screenshots circulated. Reddit threads analyzed every photo she'd ever posted, looking for evidence of an affair. Twitter accounts she didn't know existed debated whether she was a victim or a villain. Janelle found her crying in the bathroom on Tuesday afternoon, scrolling through hundreds of hateful messages from strangers who knew nothing about her actual life. "Abby, what is happening? Who are all these people?" "I'm the cautionary tale," Abigail sobbed. "I'm the story every woman knows not to become, and I became it anyway. The girl who believed a rich guy when he said he'd choose her over his perfect arranged marriage." "Okay, absolutely not." Janelle's protective older sister mode activated immediately. "Where is Yoojin right now? What is he doing to fix this?" "Probably in meetings trying to manage the disaster. I don't know. He texted this morning saying he was handling it, but how do you handle this?" Abigail gestured at her phone, at the endless stream of judgment and cruelty. "By going to him, right now. We're going to his office." "Janelle, I can't just show up at Kang Holdings." "Watch me." Janelle was already grabbing her keys and Abigail's jacket. "Come on, we're done waiting for him to handle this quietly. If he wants to be with you, he needs to actually claim you publicly. No more hiding, no more half measures." 40 minutes later, they were in the lobby of Kang Holdings in downtown San Francisco. The building was all glass and steel, impossibly modern, radiating wealth and power. Abigail felt completely out of place in her jeans and hoodie. Janelle marched up to the reception desk with the confidence of someone who'd never been intimidated by money. "We need to see Yoojin Kang. Tell him Abigail is here." The receptionist, a polished woman in her 30s, barely glanced up. "Mr. Kang is in meetings all day. I'm happy to take a message." "Tell him it's urgent. Tell him it concerns the social media disaster currently destroying both their reputations." "I'm afraid I can't interrupt." "Then I'll wait here, all day if necessary, and I'll be calling every media outlet in San Francisco to discuss Yoojin Kang's relationship with my sister while I wait." Janelle pulled out her phone. "Should I start with the Chronicle or the Examiner?" "That won't be necessary," a voice said from the elevator bay. Yoojin emerged, looking exhausted but determined. His tie was loosened. There were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept, but when he saw Abigail, something in his expression softened. "Abigail, Janelle, please come upstairs. This isn't a conversation for a lobby." The receptionist looked between them with barely concealed curiosity. Yoojin ignored her completely, ushering both women into a private elevator that required a key card to access. They rode up in tense silence. Yoojin's office was on the 32nd floor, overlooking the San Francisco Bay. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, awards and accolades displayed with understated pride. "I've been trying to reach you," Yoojin said once the door was closed. "Your phone kept going to voicemail." "Because I turned it off after the 100th person called me a whore," Abigail said flatly. "Minjai posted about your engagement. The entire internet thinks I'm your mistress." "I know, I saw." Yujin pulled out his phone, showed them a prepared statement on his screen. This goes live in 1 hour. My legal team has been reviewing it all morning. Abigail read the statement, and her breath caught. It was a formal announcement ending the engagement to Minjai Park. It outlined Yujin's intention to step back from several family business ventures to pursue his own creative and business interests. It made clear that his relationship with Abigail had begun after his decision to end the engagement, and that she had been nothing but professional throughout their working relationship. Yujin, this is everything. Your family, your position in the company, you're walking away from it all. I'm walking toward something better. He looked directly at her. I'm walking toward a life I actually want, with someone who reminds me what it feels like to be human instead of just a business asset. Janelle cleared her throat. Okay, I'm slightly less angry now, but what about Abigail's reputation? What about the people harassing her online? The statement addresses that, and I've had my legal team document the worst of the harassment for potential legal action. Yujin's expression hardened. Anyone who continues to defame Abigail will hear from my attorneys. I'm not allowing this to continue. Your family is going to lose their minds, Abigail whispered. Probably, my mother will likely disown me. Hana will make cutting remarks for the next decade. Various business associates will question my judgment. Yujin reached for Abigail's hand. But I'll still have my integrity, my skills, my own assets, and if I'm very lucky, I'll have you. You already have me, you impossible man. Abigail felt tears threatening again, but this time they were different. Relief, hope. I just don't want you to regret this. The only thing I'd regret is letting you go because I was too afraid to choose my own path. Yujin pulled her closer. I'm 32 years old, and I've never made a single major decision based on what I actually want. Until now. And I want you. I want us. I want to build something that belongs to us, not to anyone else's expectations. Janelle pulled out her phone and started typing. I'm texting Mom to tell her you found a good one. Also, I'm leaving now because this is getting too romantic and I have boundaries. She headed for the door, then paused. But Yujin, if you hurt my sister, I know where you live, multiple properties. I can find you. After she left, Abigail and Yujin stood together by the windows, looking out at the San Francisco Bay. When does the statement go live? In 45 minutes. My PR team is coordinating with several media outlets to ensure maximum coverage. Yujin checked his watch. There's going to be fallout, lots of it. Are you ready? With you, yes. Abigail leaned into him. Let's build something amazing. The statement went live at exactly 2 p.m. Within 20 minutes, it was trending on Twitter. Within an hour, it had been picked up by major business publications. By the end of the day, it was international news. Kang Air walks away from family empire for creative pursuits. Yujin Kang ends engagement to Park heiress, cites desire for authentic life. Business dynasty, shaken as youngest Kang chooses photography over profit. The response was overwhelming and divided. Some people praised Yujin for choosing passion over obligation. Others called him irresponsible and naive. Business analysts debated the financial implications. Social media had opinions on everything from his decision to his relationship with Abigail. But the most unexpected response came from Minjai herself. She released her own statement that evening. Yujin and I have known for some time that our engagement was based on family expectation rather than genuine compatibility. I support his decision to pursue his own path, and I wish him and Abigail every happiness. Some traditions deserve to be questioned. The statement was gracious and mature, and it effectively killed most of the negative speculation about Abigail being a homewrecker. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. Now they weren't a scandal. They were a love story. Two people brave enough to choose authenticity over expectation. Abigail's Instagram comments transformed overnight. The hate disappeared, replaced by support and encouragement. Her follower count exploded. Brands that had ghosted her came back with apologies and renewed offers. New opportunities emerged. Magazine interviews, podcast appearances, speaking engagements about building a creative career. But the real test came 3 days after the statement, when Eugene mother requested a meeting. They met at a restaurant in Palo Alto, neutral territory. Mrs. Kang was in her late 50s, elegant and composed, with the same intense dark eyes as her son. She ordered tea for everyone without consulting the menu, a power move that reminded Abigail uncomfortably of Hannah. "You're the reason my son is throwing away everything his father built," Mrs. Kang said to Abigail without preamble. "Mother," Eugene started. "Let her speak," Abigail interrupted quietly. She met Mrs. Kang's gaze directly. "I'm not the reason, I'm the catalyst, maybe, but Eugene made his own choice. He chose himself, his happiness, his right to build a life that actually belongs to him." Easy words from someone who has nothing to lose. "You're right, I have almost nothing to lose, which means I understand the value of the things I do have, my integrity, my relationships, my creative work." Abigail didn't back down. "Eugene has spent his whole life being what everyone else needed him to be. Don't you think he deserves a chance to discover who he actually is?" Mrs. Kang was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "His father would have been furious about this decision." "Would he?" Eugene challenged. "Or would he have understood? Father built the business because he had to, because he had something to prove. But he never asked if that's what I wanted. He just assumed I'd step into his life like putting on someone else's clothes." "Your father loved you." "I know, but love and control aren't the same thing." Eugene reached across the table, not quite touching his mother's hand. "I'm not abandoning the family. I'm just choosing to build something that's mine. Can you understand that?" Mrs. Kang looked between them, and something in her expression shifted. "You're serious about her, about this whole thing?" "Completely serious. I'm going to build Kang Creative Studios into something significant. And I'm going to do it with Abigail as my partner. Equal stake, equal voice, equal investment. That's a significant financial commitment to someone you've known for less than 3 months. It's a commitment to someone who sees me as a person, not a business asset, someone who challenges me to be better, someone who reminds me why creating beautiful things matters." Eugene looked at Abigail. "Someone I'm falling in love with." It was the first time he'd said it out loud. Abigail felt her breath catch. Mrs. Kang sighed. "You're making this very difficult for me to maintain my disapproval." She finally took a sip of her tea. "Your uncle contacted me. He wants to invest in your new venture. Apparently he's impressed by your willingness to follow your own path." Eugene's eyebrows rose. "Uncle Taeyong, but he's the most traditional." "Your father's older brother always had a rebellious streak. He just hid it better." Mrs. Kang's expression softened slightly. "I'm not giving you my blessing, not yet, but I'm willing to watch and see what you build. Prove to me this wasn't a mistake." "I will," Eugene promised. "We will." After Mrs. Kang left, Eugene and Abigail sat in the restaurant for a long time, processing what had just happened. "Did you mean it?" Abigail finally asked. "What you said about falling in love with me?" "Every word." Eugene reached for her hand across the table. "I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I've spent my whole life overthinking every decision, and this is the one thing I'm completely certain about." "I love you too," Abigail said, "just so we're clear." Eugene smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Good. That makes what I'm about to propose significantly less awkward." He pulled out a folder from his messenger bag. Inside were incorporation papers for a newly restructured Kang Creative Studios. Abigail's name was listed as co-owner and creative director. 50% stake. "You're giving me half the company." "We're building it together, equal partners in every sense." Eugene's expression was serious. "I have the business background and the initial capital. You have the creative instincts and the connection with our target audience. Together, we create something neither of us could build alone." Abigail looked at the papers, at her name in official legal documents next to Eugene's, at the future they were creating together, one decision at a time. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow. I've already secured office space in Santa Clara, right in the heart of Silicon Valley. We'll need to hire a small team. Social media manager, business coordinator, maybe an intern or two. You've been planning this. I've been hopping for this, Yujin corrected. There's a difference. 3 months later, Kang Creative Studios occupied a modern office space in Santa Clara with exposed brick walls, natural light flooding through industrial windows, and enough camera equipment to make any photographer weep with joy. The walls were covered with mood boards and concept sketches. A small team of talented, hungry creatives filled the space with energy and ambition. Abigail stood in front of a ring light, filming content for their latest client campaign. A sustainable fashion brand out of Los Angeles that wanted to reach millennial and Gen Z audiences. She moved through poses with practiced ease now, confident in ways she never could have imagined 6 months ago. Behind the camera, Yujin called out directions with the relaxed confidence of someone who'd finally found exactly where he belonged. Tilt your chin slightly left. Good. Now give me something playful. Perfect. Hold that. Their social media manager, a brilliant 24-year-old named Casey, worked at a nearby desk coordinating their content calendar. Their business coordinator, Marcus, fielded phone calls from potential clients. An intern named Sophie shadowed Yujin, taking notes and learning everything she could about professional photography. The business was thriving. They'd landed 6 major clients in their first 2 months. Abigail's Instagram had grown to over 200,000 followers, and she'd become a voice for aspiring creators who thought success was only for people born into privilege or connections. She posted regularly about her journey, about starting from nothing, about taking chances, about building something authentic in a world that constantly pressured you to be someone else's version of success. The story of how she and Yujin met had become almost legendary in creative circles. The maid who became a model, the business heir who chose art over empire. It was the kind of narrative that inspired think pieces and podcast episodes. But the truth was simpler and more meaningful than any narrative. 2 people had found each other at exactly the right moment, when both of them needed to remember what it felt like to create something just because it mattered. Yujin's photography exhibition had opened the previous month at a gallery in San Francisco. An entire show titled Finding Light, featuring his photos of Abigail. The opening night had been covered by local media and art publications. Every single piece had sold within the first week. The money from the sales went directly into Kang Creative Studios, funding their expansion and allowing them to take on more ambitious projects. Yujin's family remained complicated. His mother was slowly warming to the idea of his new life, especially after seeing the business's early success. Hana still sent occasional cutting text messages, but she'd backed off from active sabotage. His uncle Taeyong had invested a significant amount in the company and regularly checked in with advice and encouragement. Abigail and Yujin had moved in together the previous month, into a townhouse in San Mateo that had enough space for a home photography studio and guest room for Janelle's frequent visits. Janelle had appointed herself their unofficial business advisor despite having exactly 0 business experience, and somehow her instincts were usually right. Today, after wrapping the client's shoot, Yujin had something special planned. He led Abigail to his office, where he'd hung a new photo on the wall behind his desk. It was the very first picture he'd ever taken of her, that day in the library when she'd been balanced on the arm of the velvet sofa in her emerald dress. Abigail had never seen this particular shot before. In the photo, she was caught in a moment of pure, unself-conscious joy. Mid-laugh, head thrown back slightly, completely unaware she was being photographed. The light streaming through the windows created an almost ethereal glow around her. She looked free in a way she hadn't felt in years at that point in her life. "You never showed me this one," Abigail said softly. "I kept it for myself," Yujin admitted, "because this was the moment I knew my life was about to change. I just didn't realize how completely." He moved to stand beside her, both of them looking at the framed photograph. "You were trying so hard to look like someone important, someone worth noticing, but you already were. You just needed someone to see it." "You saw me," Abigail said. "Really saw me. Not what I could do for you or what I represented, just me." "Best decision I ever made." Yujin pulled her close. Well, second best. The first best was actually doing something about it instead of just admiring you from a distance. Abigail laughed and kissed him, there in the office they'd built together, surrounded by evidence of everything they'd created. Thank you for being brave enough to choose yourself. It gave me permission to choose myself, too. Outside the windows, the sun was setting over Silicon Valley, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. Inside, their team was packing up for the day, chattering about weekend plans and next week's projects. Casey called out a goodbye. Marcus reminded them about Monday's client meeting. Sophie asked one last question about lens filters before heading out. It was ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. A life they'd built together from courage and cameras, and a willingness to believe that sometimes the best things happen when you stop following everyone else's script. Abigail's phone buzzed with notifications. Another brand partnership inquiry. Comments on her latest post asking for career advice. Messages from followers sharing their own stories of taking creative risks. Ready to go home? Yujin asked, gathering his camera bag. With you, always. They locked up the studio together, hand in hand, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, who'd chosen love and authenticity over expectation and obligation, who'd built something beautiful from nothing more than a camera, courage, and the willingness to believe they deserved happiness. Janelle was indeed waiting in the parking lot, leaning against her car with her arms crossed. Finally, I've been here for 20 minutes. We're going to dinner, and you're both paying because I had to listen to you two being disgustingly in love all week. Yujin laughed, the sound easy and genuine in a way that still sometimes surprised Abigail. Fair enough. Where are we going? Somewhere nice in Palo Alto. You may have walked away from your family fortune, but you still have better taste in restaurants than we do. As they drove toward dinner, three people who'd become their own strange, perfect family, Abigail caught Yujin's eye in the rearview mirror. He winked at her, and she felt that same flutter she'd felt the first time he'd looked at her through a camera lens and seen something worth capturing. This was exactly where she was meant to be, building a business, creating art, falling more in love every day with someone who'd been brave enough to choose himself, which gave her permission to choose herself too. The best photographs, Yujin had taught her, captured not just how things looked but how they felt. And this felt like a beginning worth celebrating, like a story worth telling, like a life worth living. Sometimes the most beautiful things started with someone taking a chance on themselves. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, someone else took a chance on you too. Janelle's voice broke through her thoughts. Abby, you're doing that dreamy face thing again. It's nauseating. Ground yourself, please. Yujin reached back from the front seat and squeezed Abigail's hand. Let her dream. She's earned it. And really, what else was there to say? They'd built something real from nothing more than light and courage and the radical belief that they deserved to be happy. That was worth dreaming about, worth fighting for, worth everything they'd risked to make it real. As the car merged onto the highway heading toward Palo Alto and whatever came next, Abigail looked at the life she'd created and felt nothing but gratitude. For second chances, for people who saw you, for the courage to become who you were always meant to be. After all, the best stories didn't end. They just kept beginning, over and over, every time you chose yourself, every time you chose love, every time you chose to create something beautiful just because you could. And this story, this was just getting started.